What's up, everybody? Hope everybody's doing well. Believe it or not, I've gathered up a little bit of time off and I'm about to go do a ride here soon. Tomorrow or the next day, depending on the weather. And I'm going to take the little CT and get you guys some content. I was looking and the rear tire is shot. I didn't even realize it was this bad. I knew that it was getting down there, you know, whenever we were going out west. And unfortunately, I have looked high and low for 1730 GP1s like I have on the front here, which the front one's in still pretty good shape. And I thought about putting it on the back, and I was like, it's just extra work. So I went ahead and ordered a Shinko 244 Golden Boy, which is pretty much identical to the tread on the GP1. But unfortunately, all they had in stock was a 250. So this tire is going to be a little bit shorter and narrower, but it's going to be fine. I mean, would I rather have the 3.0 or the 275 like came on the bike? Yeah. But I just thought I'd share with you guys. Let's do a quick tire change on here. I'll walk you through in case you want to ever do your own tire change. You know, I've been doing this 30 years and I still hate doing tires on bikes. Some people are really good at it, but I've never been. But I've gotten some tools now to where it's pretty much helped me do it easy, or easier, I guess. And these same tools that I'm going to use today are the very ones that I take on the trail. So let's get right into it, guys. And then I'll drop links below for the tire irons that I use. And we're going to use something called a Baja No Pinch, which is a little bit heavy and big for the trail, but not terrible. I mean, everything that I take, tubes and all, fits in this box here. So Apache 4800 from Harbor Freight, by the way. So let's get right into it, guys. Appreciate you guys stopping by the channel. All right, so 19, 14, 10, and 12 to get the tire off. We'll get on this side first. Let's pull the roto packs off and get it out of the way. This is a cool little addition. I don't know that I would have done this if I would have knew about the giant loop bag, but it's pretty easy. But this would be a cool spot to hang a side bag or something, you know. So, but anyway, let's get this thing going here. We're gonna loosen this so we can slide the tire forward to get the chain off, and then we'll take this. We'll have to take this loose and out, and I'll walk you through, guys. All right. So first thing you're gonna do is loosen this jam nut. This is a 10 millimeter. Get that out of the way. And always just back it plenty off so that you know you're going to have enough room to get your chain off. You don't want to have to fight around that thing. And I think this has a top and bottom. If you'll notice this little cut here, there's a cut in the bottom of this chain, a swing arm for this little part here. So that has a top and bottom. So we're going to come over on the other side, do the exact same thing. And we're not going to really worry about where these end up because we'll have to retighten the chain when we get done. You want to always just start from scratch on that. I mean, you can kind of mark it, or you can kind of pay attention to where your chain is so you get close. Like this is what, 1, 2, 3 notches forward. But no biggie on that because it's a good idea to start from scratch and get your chain where you want it when you take it off, in my opinion. Alright, so we'll back this off plenty. So we know we got plenty of room. Okay, let's get this loose. This is going to be a 19 and a 14. I'll hold it on the other side. And really, you ought to really torque this if you're in a shop setting. But I just always snug it up really good. And right now this is a lock nut. By the way, I'm going to take those pegs off and do a giveaway on them soon. I know I've been saying that forever, but I don't really need them on here. So let's get this out of here and out of our way. We'll pay close attention. You got the nut, then a washer, and then of course this slider spacer here, which you really don't have to take out, but it's gonna fall out and hit the floor anyway. And usually I have this up in the air, but I thought I'd show you guys. Put this thing on the center stand out on the trail on a level ground, and if your bike is heavy in the back and this wants to rock down, get you something heavy and put on that front wheel or on your handlebars or something, and that'll help hold this off of the ground so you can work with it. Let's slide this out, get it out of our way. Now some people will say, go ahead and take the chain off before you pull that out, but I always go ahead and just pull it out and get it out of my way. Just kind of wiggle it, talk to it a little bit, and it'll come right out. And you can put a little bit of grease back on this when you go back in, and try to find somewhere to lay this where it's not going in the dirt. And just always remember, left side is the side that the axle shaft goes in. And it's up to you guys, but I prefer to take the chain off at the bottom and just kind of move it out of the way, and then you can pull the tire right off. I'm going to show you guys something else too that's kind of handy to do. On the brake caliper here, take you some pliers or a screwdriver or anything, and you can just kind of push these pads back a little bit like this, and that'll give you more room to put the rotor back in. Makes it a whole lot easier. And this will kind of slide and move around because it is actually held with the axle shaft as well. All right, let's see if we can get this tire out of here and out of the way up onto the workbench. Also, it's going to make it a whole lot easier. It's not quite as bad if you're in the woods and you can dig out right here a little bit leaves and stuff. But if you can find a couple of rocks to get that center stand just a little higher, like that's a 2x4, then this tire will come out of this area a whole lot easier. So we got the axle shaft out. Best thing to do here is kind of lean it to the side just a little as you come back, from what I've found. And be careful with your caliper because it can get in the way. And just kind of lean it to the side as you come out. And keep this caliper back here out of the way, and there it'll come right out. And this right here basically just slides in a little holder right up front there. It's just got a little groove, and then the axle shaft goes through it there and holds it in place. So it'll be pretty self-explanatory. So now you can see that tire is just about shot. Yep. So let's get this thing over here to the bench, and I'll show you guys the easiest way to change this for me. Alright, if I remember correctly, I'll remove these out of our way. Might as well. Alright, so your thin one goes rotor side, and thick one goes sprocket side. So just remember that. And you don't absolutely have to take those out of the way, but it's going to help with our Baja no pitch. And as a matter of fact, I think I've loaned out we're going to have to come up with something like an extension or something, because as you'll see in a little bit when I use the Baja no pinch, there's a shaft that's supposed to go down through here. And I'm pretty sure I've got it loaned out. This little thing right here, super cool. Down a plug, you have to get it from their website, but this thing will air the tire up on the trail in no time. It's SAE. And if you don't have an SAE, you can connect this to alligator clips or cigarette lighter socket. So it's pretty cool. But I keep all my little knick-knack stuff in here, like my valve core tool and the little thing to pull the tube through, the little cable that pulls the tube through, that makes it a lot easier. So all right, let's get this. We're going to need a 12mm as well to take this nut loose. Let's get our valve core out and get it out of the way. And I'm going to attempt to be really careful and reuse this tube. This is the second tire on this bike, and this tube's perfectly fine. Nothing wrong with it at all, so we're going to keep using it. It's not leaking or anything. So for the rest of the time, we'll just leave that off of there. It's also a good idea to take that loose before you take the air out of it. I should have done that, but that's okay. You don't really want to, when we put it back together, I'll go over it with you guys. We don't want to over tighten that. Matter of fact, some people don't even tighten it at all, so it's kind of preference, but I always kind of snug it. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to work this tire off of the bead around through here. You can use a bead protector. I used to on this bike, but it's gotten dinged up now, so I don't really worry about it. And the cool thing about this bike, this is kind of going to be kind of like doing a bicycle tire. It's not super hard on this bike at all. It's a good one to learn on. On the trail, I'm not going to use them today because they're a little harder. But Motion Pro makes these cool little tire tools, and they work really well to get the tire off of the bead. They don't have a whole lot of leverage, so you got to really pull on them pretty hard. I mean, not terribly hard, but pretty hard. So, but when you're out on the trail and you don't want a bunch of weight, these are perfect. Just for the sake of not struggling, I've been taking my long tire irons with me on the trail, and these are what they are. These are just some I got off Amazon, and they work pretty well. So, all right, so let's get this tire off. We're gonna try to be really careful and not damage this tube, and I'll show you guys the best way to do it. So you just want to make sure when you go down in here, you just want to be really careful not to get that tube. Be real gentle, and I like to just roll this up out of here and then hang that over that like that. And also it helps to keep this side pushed down, or the opposite side of the where you're starting. Keep this pushed down, and it'll make this a whole lot easier to come out. All right, so let's go on around with it here, working it off as we go, keeping this side pushed down. 3 tire irons are pretty good. You don't necessarily have to. And like I said, let's be really careful and try not to get that tube if we can help it. Working that out just a little bit at a time. Getting as barely much as you need. It's got some water in it, believe it or not. Working it around just like that. Again, being careful not to pinch that tube, because you can always reuse a good heavy duty tube as long as you don't hit it with the tire iron. It doesn't take much to pinch it. And when you get around this valve stem, you have a little bit more chance of pinching it, so try to leave it for last if you can. And then it should just come right off. Now that's all there is to getting the front of the tire off. And next, what we're going to do, you want to make sure this bead here is broken loose all the way around. Okay, and then we'll pull the tire up as much as we can. Push your valve core back, and we'll go get that tube out of there. All right, so what we'll do, we'll start working this tube out around, being really gentle with it. This is another reason that I like to do the rotor side. You don't risk hitting it on the sprocket and pinching or putting a hole in it from the sprocket. All right, so once you get that done, we can pull our valve stem out like this, and there's our tube. Now this is actually the factory tube, believe it or not. It's starting to get a little bit of oxidation around this thing here. You know, since I saw this, I think we're going to put one. I have a new heavy duty tube. I hate to have to change this again. And if you look right here, it's just starting to separate there, and there's a lot of rust on this nut. Let's go ahead and put a tube in it. Keep this one for a spare. We're going to get this tire on off of here. This is where your little spoon part of your tire tool is going to come in handy. What we're going to do, it doesn't matter where you start, just similar to the way we did before, is try to get this over here and hang that bottom edge and roll it up out of there just like we did before. Hang it on your rotor there, and we're going to do that all the way around till we get this tire off. Now this can be a little tricky because it's sort of tight. But you just kind of have to get a little bit rough with it, bring it right on up out of there. You might can move this like that. And this is where your 3 irons come in handy, because sometimes if you take this one back out, it can jump back in, but you can do it with 2. I've done plenty of tires with 2 irons. Try to get that hooked in there really good. You don't have to be careful anymore about the tube. This out of there, out of the way. And you'll notice once you get this thing started, it'll come right off. That's all there is to it. I know it looks easy on the on there, but, and like I said, it's a small tire, it's flimsy, it's a whole lot easier to do this on this bike than it is a big road bike or even a big dirt bike. So, all right, let me get that new tube and I'll show you what we're gonna do to lube it up and get it back on. All right, guys, also you want to inspect this rubber band here that goes around. Make sure you don't have any debris in your rim, especially if you're out in the woods. We got a little bit of water in here. We're gonna wipe that out. I have no idea where it came from. Probably some stream crossings or something. But this band here is looking pretty good. Don't see anything wrong with it at all. And this is the factory one, so that's good. And you want to make sure that hole there lines up with your valve stem, of course. Self-explanatory. Okay. Now next, we're going to take our new tire here, and we're just going to shake a little bit of baby powder in, about that much or so, and then let's just spin it. Whoops. Let's just spin it and get that uniform around. That's all we need for the tube lubrication. On this bead here, you want a little bit of soap. I kind of prefer Dawn dish detergent. Just put a little bit around it and it'll help you install it big time. I keep this little bottle here. It's something I think my daughter had, and I put Dawn in it, dish detergent, and I always just put a little bit in your hand like this. Don't need a whole ton. And just apply it to the bead all the way around uniformly. And that stuff's pretty slick. Will definitely help you get that tire on there. Alright. As far as I know, this particular tire does not have an inside out or rotation. Max speed 75 miles per hour. Oh boy, we better take that back. That CT might break that going downhill. Alright, so what we do here is start it on as much as you can get it manually by moving it across there like that. I have a rim lock. Let me grab it. We're just going to put this down in just to keep the tire from moving out of its place here. Alright, we'll start working that around with our tire tool. And as I said, I am not an expert on this. I'm actually terrible at it. I hate it. Now, you just want one side to go on, not both, because we still have to get our tube in there. Now, some people put the tube in the tire and air it up and then get it on there, but I've never had too good of luck doing that. And when you get down here to the end, it can start getting a little bit tough on you just because you're really stretching that tire. Just make sure you keep this side down off of that bead. And it's not too bad. You just don't want to try to do too, like I'm doing too much at once there. You don't want to try to do too much or it makes it tough. And then when you get down here to this last little section, you can just fold it right on in there. And you're done with that part. That's all there is to it, okay? Get our rim lock out here if we can. Now, to me, this can be the hardest part, especially with this little thin tire. This is, it's not really wide enough for this rim because it's a 2.5 and that rim's made for a 2.75. So you won't quite have the trouble I'm gonna have here. We're going to make it work. So we're going to take our valve stem core off, cover off, and this nut, just this one nut, not this one. Leave this one alone. That's going to go on the bottom side. Set these aside for later. Now, you've got to get this through this hole right here from this side. Now this little tool here that I have is going to make that easier for us. And this thing is cheap. I think Motion Pro makes one. This is an Amazon one. All you're going to do is feed this cable through from the outside in. You have to push down on that bottom lip and get this end up here where you can get to it, okay? That's all there is to it. And then this right here is going to thread inside of this. So we have to take our valve core out. Get it out of there and get it out of your way. And then we're going to thread this cable end into our valve core. So it just goes right in there, just like that, and start threading it in. Don't have to be super tight, just run it in where it doesn't strip it out or anything. Alright, now we're going to be really careful, and I'm going to put just a little more baby powder on this tube just for good measure. Not 100% necessary, but this will help the tube last longer and stay lubricated throughout its life inside the tire. Alright, so now we'll grab this T-handle here, and our goal is to get this through the rim. So we want this lined up with that hole, and what we're going to do first is start pushing the tube sort of in place where it should kind of be, right, like that. Keeping it flat as you can. Don't get it knotted up if you can help it, and you want to keep this in line with this hole. And then we'll start pulling the slack out of this rope here, and we'll attempt to help it down to where it goes. And like I said, this is not an easy task. The bigger the tire here, the easier this is. And then we'll just pull it right through with our cable here. And that's all there is to it. Now, you don't want to let that go back in. The main goal is to keep that from going back in there. So always just grab it here, take our tool off. And this cheaper one here is has to spin, so it kind of can be a pain in the neck sometimes. Alright, keep that from going back in there with every ounce of your being. Start this 12mm nut here. And just all you need to do is kind of snug it up. That's not important, as long as you get that started. Alright, now the goal is to work this tube in all the way around and leaving it lay flat as you go in with it. Okay, just tuck it in as you go around. Not wadding it up if you can help it. And it'll kind of find its place once you get it down in there. Okay, all the way around. And like I said, try to keep it as flat as you can. Don't let it wad up, and it'll find its home inside that rim, just like this. When you get down here to the end, it may try to walk out everywhere else except where you want it to, and you just have to keep it. Use both hands and do everything you can to keep it down in there, just like that. Okay, that's got it. Nothing to it really. Then what I like to do is take my hand and go all the way around, busting your knuckles, and push down, because you want that thing out of harm's way as possible. Okay, it's so common for people to pinch this tube as they're pushing this tire back down on the rim. It's so easy to do, guys, and it makes your life rough when that happens, because you have to start over. And what if you don't have another tube or a patch kit? Then you're walking. Okay, here's where our Baja no pinch tool comes in handy. What we'll do here is get this tire started somewhere, okay, and we'll hold it in one place, and then we'll go around. I'm going to put just a little more soap around it to make it easy on us. Alright, so this is our Baja no pinch tool. You can put this on just like we did the first bead with the tire irons. It's just as easy, except for you may end up pinching the tube. This is designed to not pinch. It's not super heavy, and it has adapters for just about any bike from this bike up to the Africa Twin. But I've lost or loaned out my arbor that goes down in this one, so I use a 3/8 extension. It works fine. And I'll show you guys how we're going to do it here. Let's do just a little bit more soap along the edge here if we can. Like I said, we use Dawn. It, to me, works the best, stays on the longest while you work. Don't need much. And get it on that bead. This is going to really help slip that thing down in there. Okay, now I like to start away from the valve course, from the valve stem. Something I want to add too, guys. If you're going to do this without this no pinch, it's a good idea to put just a little bit of air in this tube. While, you know, just to kind of straighten it out a little bit before you put it down in there. Now, I'm talking about a minimal amount of air. You don't need much at all. Let's put our valve cord back in. It'll just kind of blow it up enough to get it up in the tire. But if you put too much, it makes it tough to get the tire on the rim. So, but you can shoot some in there and always let a little bit back out if you get too much. So let's put just a swig of air in. Now out on the trail, this is either going to be a pump or one of those mini compressors like I have there, but just a little. We don't need much. You can stick your hand down in there and say, oh yeah, it's starting to kind of blow up a little bit and get out of harm's way. All right, let's see if we can get our rim lock in so we don't have to fight around that part. All right, guys, so now we got our rim lock in, and you also want to be careful with it with your tube. But let's see if we can get this started. You just put this on the edge of the tire. It's on this little tire here. You may end up having to kind of hold down on this a little bit till you get it started good. Can be a little tough, and we're just going to walk this right around. Just like so. Being ever so gentle. No hurry whatsoever. We're just going to push that in as we go around. And see, in this case, you're not hitting the rim. You're not even close to the tube. And we're just taking our time and being gentle with the tire and the bead. And you can push down on this opposite side of where you're working. And that'll make it 1,000 times easier on the bead here to have to stretch. If you keep it down off of this bead on this side. Which is, you know, it's kind of tough to do, but sometimes I just use my body and whatever it takes. But we don't have to take huge bites. We can just take small bites as we go. And this effort on this lever is not terrible. I mean, it's not easy, but it's not real bad. Let's just keep working around gently. And that's all there is to it, guys. Of course, the battery died the minute that snapped down in there. Isn't that how it goes? But that's all there is to it. We got that on there. Now, all we got left to do is put some air in it. Anytime I do a new tire on a bike, I like to overinflate it a little to make sure we get the beads to seat up onto the rim where they should be. So this tire I usually run about 20 pounds in this tire. So I'm going to do about 30 in it, 35 or so. We're just going to leave it there and let that work its way up, and then I'll air them back down where it needs to be. Now, as we talked about before, this doesn't have to be super tight. Over tightening this and letting the stem turn, if you do over tighten it, will damage it more than just not even putting it on there. And really in a pinch, of course you're going to have a 12 anyways when you're doing your chain tightening. So just give this a barely snug is all you want. You do not need to over tighten this at all. If you see this right here even microscopically start turning, don't turn it anymore. That's all you have to do. And we'll put our valve stem cap on there. Now, some people in the motocross world, which a lot of the guys run tubeless now, but tubeless, that's a different kind of tube. A lot of the guys will back this nut up against this. and that lets that just kind of float in there, and I guess that's okay. But anyway, she's on there, guys. So now we'll put it back on, and that's all there is to it. Get the tire back on and the chain tightened where it's supposed to be, and we'll have it. Alright, and remember, we kind of had to lean it a little bit to get it back in and out of there. No biggie. You may say a choice word or two on the trail. Make sure you go on with your chain as you go in, guys. It makes it a heck of a lot easier. Okay. Once you get that in place, then you're going to want to make sure that you've got your axle in hand. Let's go over here and get it. I love this Lubriplate grease number 105. It's really for engines, but it's really nice. Stays put, stays on. And we'll just put a little light coat. You don't need a ton on there. It's going to make it easy to go in. Keep the water and rust away all at the same time. Alright, so the easiest way to do this, kind of get down here with it. Start raising it up. You're going to want to make sure your brake caliper, brake pads go in like they're supposed to. And then you just basically get down here where you can see and use your axle to line everything up. And at this point, this is where you have to hold your mouth just right. So what we'll do now is get this kind of started sliding in like so. And we'll try to make sure all this is lined up before we get too far ahead of ourselves. Remember, that thing has a front and a back. Now then, I'll just went ahead and got that completely out of the way till I can kind of see. You can use your judgment on that. I was just running out of hands there. Okay, so then you want all that to line up, and we'll slide it right on through there. Uh-oh. Just like so. And then remember, you got this. A washer. And then the nut. Now we'll tension up our chain. I'll show you guys how to do that. And we'll have it. Something I kind of like to do is start by hand. Is basically, if you remember, we had about 3 notches here, probably, or so. So you can just kind of loosely tighten this and fill the chain as you go. So that's about 3 notches, and that's pretty good. You want about 1.5 inches on your chain. Oh wow, wait a minute, that's that got caught up there. Yeah, I guess you have to be careful. I had never had that happen, but it got caught here on this hose a little bit. So let's tighten it a little more. All right, so that's about 3. Let's get 3 on this side to begin with. You really probably should snug this a little first. Getting a little bit ahead of myself here. All right, and then we'll go ahead and just hand tighten this one and lining all this up as we go. And we want about 3 still. Okay. Now I'm going to take our wrenches here and just barely snug this axle up since we're close. We don't want to snug it up more than we have to, but we want to snug it up enough to where we've taken the slack out of it. And that way it's a little easier, because once we get the slack out, then when we tighten the chain, it'll kind of stay put. We don't want to put too much pressure on this. You'll kind of feel when you start getting it tight. Like, that's probably good. You can see I can still move it there. Okay, now let's go over here and fill up our chain. Kind of see where we're at. So we're still pretty loose, so let's go ahead, snug this up a little more. Let's cover that third notch up on this side. Let me get a little light here so you guys can see. All right, so we got both of these perfectly showing and that third one covered up. Let's do the exact same thing over here. It's really important to keep this even. And if you go too far, you can just bump it forward. And that's about where we're at. Go just a little more. Okay. Now let's fill up our chain. Now, you really need to check this chain, in my opinion, with it down off of the kickstand. And on the side stand. I might be wrong about that in the manual and stuff, but I've done enough of them to kind of know. But you want about 1.5 inches of play here. This is a little bit too much. So let's take it down off the kickstand and see how much that changes. So the weight of its own self on it, now that's pretty darn close right there. We could go just a little tighter than that. You guys see the slack in this chain here? So you want about 1.5 inches, and that's more like about 2 inches. So let's just barely tighten this a little bit on both sides. So now we're kind of just about even, almost with the second notch at the very first of the second notch. And like I said before, you want to be pretty even on both sides so that the bike tracks the same. I'm going to back off of this one just barely. I might have went a little bit too far. Okay, so as you see, if you get square with that, we're just at the front edge, barely up above the front edge of that second mark on the right side, and pretty much exactly the same on this side, maybe just barely shy. And that's a pretty good amount of tension for the chain with it on the side stand right there. It's about 1.5 inches, 30 millimeters. I'm good with that. Okay, now that we have that where we want it, I kind of like to go ahead and tighten this down good and then snug these up against this already tightened, and you know that's not going anywhere. So let's take our 19 and really give that a good snug here. Just don't want that to come off. I think that's probably supposed to be 50 or 60 foot-pounds if I had to guess. Probably ought to look that up, but too many years of doing it, and unless I'm inside the engine, I just don't use a torque wrench anymore. Alright, so this isn't going to move now. We don't have to worry about that anymore. Let's snug these 12s up against there. You know that's not coming off. That keeps this cap tight here. And then we can snug this 10 jam nut against that one. We'll hold this with this wrench and tighten it with this one. Don't have to worry about that anymore. Do the same thing over here. I just like to snug these against it, and that way you know that the wheel can't move forward or backwards. Well, it could actually move back, but it can't move forward, and that's what you want. Okay. Snug that up good so you don't lose your jam nut. There we go. All there is to it, guys. Like I said, you just want to make sure you got that lined up. There's a little slide there for the caliper. Then those, as I showed you. Now what I would like to do now is ride it. Let that tire get good and hot on the road. Maybe go a mile and come back and put it where we want it. And I usually run about 17 pounds because, you know, we do a lot of off-road. So, all right, guys, that's all I got today. So I got the little bike ready to go. She's got a new Golden Boy on there. It doesn't look too bad. It's a little narrow compared to the front, but that's okay. It was cheap and it was available. I didn't have to wait. So one day we might swap it on the front, but I doubt it. I'll probably just run it till it gets down and try to find a GP1 again, or who knows, maybe a different kind of tire. But anyway, I'll link everything below. I appreciate you guys if you've made it this far in the video. I appreciate it. I know, you know, a lot of people already know how to change a tire, but I thought, well, if you haven't done it before, you're new, this will be a good opportunity to learn. I'm not the best to learn on tires. I just have struggled with them for years. I can do car tires pretty good with a machine, but I've just been self-taught on how to do it, and that's how I get it done. And that Baja No Pinch is really worth the money for me, because I do a lot of tires for customers too. And you know, if I did more, I guess I'd get a machine. But that's all I got on the little CT today, guys. So stay tuned. I'm gonna try to take it for a ride. It's really hot here in upstate South Carolina right now, and we're gonna go up towards Boone like we've done before. I'll try to put the video up here of where we went a couple years ago, and but I'll get started on another trip tomorrow, hopefully, or the next day. I've got this week off, so we'll get that going. I'll take the camera with me and do some filming, and we'll be back at it, editing, and get you guys another video ready shortly. Okay? All right, appreciate you guys. Take care. Come back for the next one.